So we start the last chapter of our book today. So 9 Essential Failures of a Faithful Life, Upside Down Spirituality. We get to chapter 9. The title of the chapter is The Church of Saint Big Box. And then the subtitle is the failure to think that bigger is better. Something to that effect. So, the Church of Saint Big Box. Which of the following are better if they're bigger? Paychecks, houses, serving size, hometown, grocery store, family, TV screens, schools.
All of the above.
Mm-hmm.
You say all of the above, but you moved into a smaller house.
Well, my bigger house was better, but my small house is just as good.
Okay.
Smaller house is easier to keep clean.
Yeah, right.
Any of those you'd argue almost are never better to be bigger?
Service.
All of the above. Okay, hometown. I thought I heard one.
I'll give you paycheck. The rest of it, it's small.
Okay, so you want the paycheck big, but the house can be small. The serving size can be small.
That depends.
Well,
So
it's better for you.
You go to restaurants and you get a 4,000 calorie plate, you know, that you can eat half of maybe, and they almost, if you are, most of us in this room grew up in that generation of clean your plate, finish your plate, don't waste food, right? And I don't know when it was. I think someplace in my 30s and 40s I was reading something about that and said, well, once you've gotten the calories you need, with the rest of what's on that plate, is it better to use your body as the trash can it goes into? Or is it better to put it into the real trash can and spare your body? Right? And obviously it would be better if we prepared our portion as reasonable in the first place so that it wouldn't have the waste, because waste is not a good thing.
Well, I say take it home.
You can
and
take it
have
home.
it for leftovers,
Right.
and
Yeah.
then you're saving money and
Right.
As long as, well, you know, the old doggy bag, right? So you can bring it to Fido. But many things heat up fine just at home, but then you have certain things. It's like you bring it home. I mean, even we cooked them at home, but we made steaks the other night, and then to warm up a grilled steak. Well, you're not getting the medium rare thing anymore, and it gets kind of tough and chewy, and you almost have to do something different with it than just to warm it up and eat it as it just doesn't translate. And seafood often doesn't do as well second day. Shrimp wants to be kind of lightly cooked, and if you put it and heat it up in a microwave, it gets kind of chewy and pencil eraser-like.
well, usually when I go out and eat shrimp, they don't give me enough to have leftovers.
Well, that's often true too. Yeah, it depends on where you're eating and what you're having. But there's been a tendency to push the portion sizes way up. People from say from Europe, if they visit here, they think, oh man, because you go to the restaurant, they give you a week's worth of food on the table. And then we see, I think especially in French cuisine, you see this plate, and it's got this tiny little bit of food in the center of it, and it looks really nice, and there's about 3 bites there. They think differently about some of that. Anyway, so, okay, but you say maybe serving size can be large.
I give you that one.
You give me that one too. All right, all right.
You convinced me on that.
Okay. So what's the advantages to having those things big, or what would be advantages to having them smaller? What would be disadvantages of having them big?
A bigger house is way too much to clean.
Utility bills are going to be more in a bigger house.
Yeah, more
heating
expensive,
and more air.
Taxes.
more work.
You have to have
So-
a bigger mower.
Yeah.
Oh, it gets
Well, it
you a
depends
lot
on
wider.
what size yard you have.
Well, yeah, okay. Yeah. But so there's times you want that space, you want that room that you can put the exercise equipment in, so it doesn't have to sit in your master bedroom or
That would be nice.
something along those lines. But on the other hand, the electric bill goes up, and then you have eternal honeydew projects, because you know that things will break down. It's just a matter of time. If you go into a brand new house, you get kind of a honeymoon period. You get a few years during which things are going to work right, and then you better be ready for trips to Home Depot and Lowe's, because they're never going to end. So you got more of that kind of thing. So it becomes another job.
That's where your extra paycheck comes in, because you pay somebody.
Okay, big paycheck, big house. These things need to go together. Yeah. Grocery store?
Depending on the grocery store.
Yeah, it wasn't until Walmart that, we had a one-stop shop. I mean,
Super center.
grocery stores just need to sell groceries. That's what you're there for.
So the interesting competitor to Walmart the last 10 years or so, I think, has been Aldi. They're the one other company that seems to be able to compete on price. In fact, we shop at Aldi regularly. I would say that our grocery bill is consistently 30% less than it would be at Walmart. 30%, that's not a small amount. But, at Aldi, when Henry Ford invented the Model T, he said you can have it in any color you want as long as it's black. Right? Aldi says if you want to buy ketchup or mustard or chips, you can have them from any brand you want as long as it's our store brand. Because you're not going to have Heinz and Del Monte and French's and store brand and some gourmet brand. You're not going to get that. You get Berman's. That's it. That's your only choice. But by doing that kind of thing, they keep the store small. You get through it pretty quickly, and they keep the prices down. So it's a different approach to the whole thing compared to today, where people you go down some aisles, they'll have an entire aisle dedicated to condiments, and it just goes on and on and on with the choices, or the coffees, or whatever it might be. So big store, lots of choices. Often buying power keeps prices low. Small store, in and out quick. It can be done so that the prices are down too, lower. Anyway.
Well, service is a lot better.
Okay, sometimes when it's smaller format, the service can be better. Now, I wouldn't accuse Aldi of having great service, because part of the way they're saving money is they work on a scale. Like 3 people are operating that whole grocery store. They're checking people out at the register, and they're doing the stocking, and they're unloading the truck in the back.
And you got to pay for your grocery card. I guess you get your quarter basket.
Get your quarterback, yeah. There's no, you got to pay for grocery bags every time if you want them.
Yeah.
If you want them,
Mm-hmm.
we've got the reusables now.
Yeah.
You walk into Walmart, right, and you want some. I don't go to browse. I go to get something. So you go in there and you're like, where do I find it?
I agree.
You can't hardly find it. So
Well, and if you switch grocery stores, you have the same issue sometimes. Even if you regularly do grocery shopping in a store.
yeah, well.
They
then,
change stuff
usually
around.
there's a sign or an aisle.
Yes.
Walmart is so big, and then you're like, oh, okay.
Well, they
I'll ask
change.
somebody.
Yeah.
They change
Oh,
stuff
no.
around
It's not my
too, so that you
department.
have to look.
Well, of course, and you know where they put the milk
Way.
Yeah.
will always be in the back of the store, and you know why? It forces you to go past all of their marketing and to see all the other foods in case you might be a little hungry
And I-
on the way to get the milk.
And I
So
fall into
if
it
you're
all
just
the time.
popping in because you ran out of milk in that middle of the week and you want to get a gallon, it's always going to be a trip to the very back of the store. They figured that out. What's that?
Look at the exercise point of view. Getting all those steps.
Good job, Carolyn.
All right. It's good for your health to do that extra walking.
How many,
Do you park at the far end of the parking lot also?
Yep.
Oh, well, okay. Good
how
for
many
you.
people go into the grocery store on a regular basis to get one item and come out with just that one item?
Right. It's
Any
always
of us?
5.
Any of y'all?
On a regular basis? Not on a regular basis, no.
Not a regular basis.
No, even if I just need
So
that
it's
one
not just
item.
me.
No, well, so what does that tell you? The marketing works.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Schools.
More students.
We live in a time in which people have had, so if you have the huge high school with 2,000 or 3,000 students, what's the advantage?
Well, you get the ultra AP calculus and Byzantine philosophy courses.
Okay, so the offerings for classes will be huge, but probably even bigger in our culture, State football champions, right?
Oh, yeah.
You have that huge student body size, and you're pulling from a bigger pool of athletes, and so you're going to have state championship athletic teams. That's a lot of times why you see these mergers into these bigger and bigger and bigger high schools. The downside.
Nobody knows. You're lost. You could be totally anonymous. They could go all the way through 4 years and nobody will know you were there.
Okay.
Nobody will remember.
Yeah.
In a small school, they need everybody, so you have a lot of opportunities to do stuff.
Okay. Yeah. So I went to a small school, and I played sports. I sang in several choirs. I was the editor of the yearbook. I was, several other things. Like I was class president for a while. In a large school, it's like pick one, and then maybe, right? Maybe. So, but you get that spectrum of experience when there's less competition that way. And then I think class size will often be smaller, so the instruction will be more personal. You know, with universities and colleges too. One of the things they now today try to advocate, even if it's it's Oklahoma or Oklahoma State. They want to push for a teacher-to-student ratio that's smaller because they recognize that educationally, generally, that's better than sitting in this huge auditorium, watching the teacher from the 18th row. That generally that personal relationship is better. If you look at again the European system, very often when you get to graduate work in particular, you got 4 or 5 students with an instructor, and it's very intimate, but there's this very direct instruction that goes on, and there's some advantages to that. It's not as efficient, but at least it's not as efficient in terms of getting a lot of people instructed, but it tends to bring the education level up. So, all right, well, what lurks beneath? So what's behind our fascination with bigger? And I could have put a bunch of other things up there. What about military? What about nation? What about population? What about all kinds of things? We tend to think in terms of bigger, better. Why are we drawn to larger things? I think that there are some biblical examples we can look at. Just briefly, Genesis 11. Then they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we make a name for ourselves and not be scattered over the face of the whole earth." Well, okay, this is the account of the Tower of Babel. So what did they want to do there? Why did they want this to be gathered in the city? Instead of spreading out across the world like God had said, they wanted to be gathered in a large population center, and they wanted to build this magnificent structure. And they even say, what's their purpose?
The center of attention.
Center of attention. We will make a name for ourselves. There is something of human pride in that sort of a endeavor. And of course there is, it doesn't appear in the passage in the part that I quoted here, but there's something of a defiance of God in the whole thing as well, right? So we won't be scattered over the face of the whole earth, because he had told them, go spread out and populate the world. And they said, nah, we like it better our way. Recognize any of those? So, tallest buildings in the world pretty much at this point in time. This is the only one in our country at this point in time, One World Trade Center. And it only gets there because they stuck a spire on top. The floors don't always go as high as almost any of these others, maybe this one, but I think they've got some living space or office space in the top up to here anyway. This is the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. That's the tallest building in the world. It's over 2,000 feet tall.
Which is in the Middle East.
It dwarfs many of the others.
We saw it.
But so they recognize that, especially in Asia today, and in parts of the Middle East, there is a competition going on. Why? What difference does it make to have the tallest?
The longest.
the longest.
Make a name for ourselves.
Make a name for ourselves. There's something of human pride in that. We're better. See, here's our engineering. Here's our greatness. How about this? Maybe you've seen. Anybody know where that is? Where it's going to be?
Oh, that's that one in Oklahoma City that they're.
Yeah, if they build it, it will be in the top 5 in the world. It will be the biggest in North America. It will be much larger than One World Trade Center or the Sears Tower in Chicago.
So where are they gonna put that? Do you know?
Edge of Bricktown, if I'm not mistaken. It'll be downtown Oklahoma City. Well, I mean, so I think this is the Devon Tower.
Yeah.
So you see, it almost doubles the height of the Devon Tower. Well, is it because we really lack so much space in Oklahoma that we have to go up so far?
We have a really
We need
small
to see it
downtown. We hardly have a downtown at all. I mean, we don't really need. I mean, it's not very. It's sort of downtowny when you get there, you know, and you go get out for lunch or something like that. But it doesn't. I mean, it's.
So whether you like it or not, you know, the question could be asked anyway. What's really the purpose of making it so huge? Well, it becomes a point. It will become a tourist destination kind of thing. It will be to attract. We're going to make a name for ourselves. There's a fair amount of human pride involved in those kinds of projects.
Have they given a date of completion on that?
They haven't. What they're going to do is build these smaller sections first. And then I think I've heard even they're talking about the big tower coming in 2 parts. So they'll build it up maybe close to Devon size and then engineer it in such a way that they can go up from there as they fill it up. If they can fill it up.
Is Grace Lutheran Church going to be on the top?
Yes, and you have to take the stairs.
Because you beat your steps.
So in keeping with Carolyn's, walk
your
farther, you'll take the stairs to get your exercise. We will have the fittest congregation.
Or most heart attacks.
All right. Well, it could happen too. All right. Job 1:1-3. In the land of Uz, there lived a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, and he owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys, and had a large number of servants. He was the greatest man among all the people of the East.
Like the richest man.
Now, it's not a criticism of Job, right? It's not a criticism of Job. But why is he the greatest man among all the people of the East? Do you suppose it's because he's blameless and upright? That he has that reputation of being the greatest man among all the people of the
Because
East?
he had a lot of stuff.
He was wealthy, right? He was wealthy. In God's eyes, he certainly was up there, I suppose, because he feared God and he shunned evil. That was a good thing. But the reputation from the world came because he had all the wealth.
And that was the test.
You know who these guys are? Maybe there's one you don't.
I only know one.
You know who this is? That's Bezos, Amazon, right? You know who this is?
Warren Buffett.
Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway. You know who this is?
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk, currently the richest man in the world, about almost 250 billion. 245, I think is what I read. 241, something like that. This one may be less familiar. Larry Ellison, founder of Oracle.
Oh.
I don't know. Maybe in
Doesn't
business.
he own Maui?
Could be. Yeah, I mean, probably through his other investments. So, I mean, I know Oracle at least used to be a big software company, but never made anything that I used. And it's not like Microsoft. Windows is on every Windows operating system computer in the world. But anyway, he's in the top 5. And this is the one you probably are less familiar with. Bernard Arnault, he is a French man who runs companies that, it's kind of a conglomerate of things, if I understand it. He's actually 2nd richest in the world. Almost 200 billion, 191 billion. Why do we know them?
Because of how much money they have.
Okay, so if Job was the greatest man in the East in his time, these kind of are the greatest men in our time, in as much as they have more money than just about anybody else. And they've been, in order to get there, they had to be very successful in the areas of endeavor in which they worked. They may be, some were more and some were less ethical along the way, perhaps, but for the most part, you know, they're not crime bosses. They got there by being very successful in their field of interest. But people want, they compete with each other. They will run their business to move up. As though at 100 billion, I'm not quite, I don't have enough. I need 150 billion so I can pass the next guy.
Are any of them Christian?
Buffett might be.
What about Soros?
George Soros is a multi-billionaire, but he doesn't crack the top 10. There's a lot of billionaires, right? You don't have to be super wealthy to be in that top 5 or top 10. We could list out, you know, if you put the next 5, you're going to get Bill Gates in there. Bill Gates used to be in the top 5, but he's now in the next 5.
Well, Mark Green he's probably not in the top 10.
I don't know any of these names.
No, I don't think so. You know, he's a billionaire, multi-billionaire, but not that level. Kind of hundreds, not hundreds of billions.
Yeah.
We watch, the History Channel does. They've got a number of series that kind of follow the same theme. The foods that built America, the industries that built America. They even have like the toys that built America. But so they had one on the tycoons of industry. And the competition between John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie, which at some point in time had no longer anything to do with steel or oil. They weren't going to go anywhere. They were doing just fine. It had nothing to do with their industries. It all had to do with a personal competition that they had to be the top guy.
And they play dirty too.
Well, they played dirty with each other.
Yeah.
And then they ran roughshod over all kinds of people in order to get where they wanted to get. It was, you know, they weren't very ethical. They weren't maybe legally criminal, but what they did to other people to get where they got was not nice in many cases. But people want that pride of position, right? Bigger seems better. Bigger seems better.
Greedy.
Psalm 33:16. No king is saved by the size of his army. No warrior escapes by his great strength. A horse is a vain hope for deliverance. Despite all its great strength, it cannot save. But the eyes of the Lord are on those who fear him, on those whose hope is in his unfailing love. So, it doesn't mean that a small army is better. Sometimes a big army, if nothing else, can be a deterrent. But anyone who knows history knows that the big army doesn't always win. Sometimes, but not always. The race does not always go to the swift or the battle to the strong, Ecclesiastes says, but time and chance happen to them all. There are circumstances that work against this kind of thing. So people think they'll be more powerful, maybe they'll be more secure, maybe they'll be more safe in the size of their army. But if you've populated your army with cowards, good luck. And if you don't take into consideration the importance of strategy, good luck. And if you don't realize that just things like the weather can make it work or not work, you know, the D-Day invasion rode on a razor's edge because of the weather, as to whether that was ever going to pull off at all. What was it? One of the battles with Napoleon, where there was a fog at sea that, was it Napoleon or is this the Spanish Armada? Whether, you know, fog at sea that prevented ships from being able to see and communicate with each other, and the smaller was able to defeat the bigger. Should the United States Revolution ever have succeeded?
Never.
On paper, no.
Best army in the world.
The best army in the
1,000
world.
ships off of New York City and a bunch of penny.
A bunch of farmers with their hunting rifles,
Right.
their muskets, you know. But it shouldn't have worked, right? So again, I'm not saying that smaller is better.
Well,
I'm just saying that a lot of times the reason people want the big is more of an illusion than one might think. But you know, they feel safe, they feel secure, etc. You know, today, largest world militaries. Well, I mean, my goodness, China outnumbers us by 700,000 soldiers, and India is bigger. Of course, they both have much bigger populations from which to draw. In terms of our total population, China is what, 6-7 times bigger than we are, and India is close to that, 5-6 times bigger than we are. So the fact that we've, you know, we don't have 1.5 to 2 billion people in the United States. We have about 330 million people in the United States. The big is not really about size at all, not per se. It's actually not the size that matters, but what the size provides. We're looking for the fruits of the big. The big seems so irresistible because in it we find something deeper we're searching for. Is it your pride? Is it your reputation? Is it your security? Is it the standard of living? Is it your status? Is it your self-worth? You just feel better about yourself? Is it acceptance? What about the church? That's where this is headed. The attraction of megachurches. Some definitions. So a megachurch is a church that has an average weekend attendance that exceeds 2,000. The biggest one in the United States is Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas, Joel Osteen's church. Weekend attendance is 43,500. 43,500 a weekend. Yeah, you know that they took over the old Compaq Center where the Houston Rockets used to play their basketball games and converted it into their sanctuary.
So you can have your best life now.
So you can have your best life now, yeah. See how that works on Judgment Day, right?
Right.
Okay, average number of services per weekend, 5. So as big as that, you know, to get everybody into a building. At some point in time, you can't just build a building, you know. I mean, they worship in the Compaq Center. You would have to build a football-sized stadium to get everybody in for one service. And at some point in time, you just can't make the economics of that work. So multiple services, usually 5 per weekend, which means you've got choices then. Usually at least a couple on Saturday and maybe 3 on Sunday. And maybe more in some cases, right? At least 5. Multiple campuses very often. That's another strategy they'll use. Oh, Andy Stanley in the north side of Atlanta, he's got at least 3 campuses. Well, of course, this... You know how this works, right? You've got a local pastoral team of some sort that's taking care of some of the administrative and some of the personal care. But Craig Greschel is on the big screen at every Life Church every Sunday. That's how that works. So, and they've got about 20 campuses around the Southwest, if I understand right. I mean, they've got at least 3 or 4 here in the Oklahoma City area. They're based in Edmond. They're also in Moore. They're also in Oklahoma City. They're also in Norman. They're out in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I mean, they've got a number of campuses. But the preacher, I think I told you the story that, 2016, 2017, about the time that the Life Church here in Norman went up, I was out canvassing one night in, it's a subdivision on the northeast side of Norman called the Vineyard. Or, no, the Vineyard, yeah. Anyway, the Chardonnay and the Vineyard. Anyway, so, knock on the door, a guy comes out, I introduce myself. He says, oh, well, I'm the new pastor at Life Church Norman. Oh, nice to meet you. So we got a chance to chat a little bit, and he explained to me. So they hadn't started services yet, but he told me that opening Sunday, they expected for their initial service to have 1,000 in attendance, many of which were going to be seated into the congregation from those who were driving up to Moore to that campus. Again, as a pastor, he had essentially no preaching duties. He might have some Bible classes during the week, but he had no preaching duties on Sunday morning. That's Pastor Greschel. And then he told me a story about, he had been in Albuquerque, and the reason he had been the pastor at that campus is the previous pastor had decided someplace along the line that he wanted to do some Sunday morning preaching. And so they turned the screen off, and the guy actually preached to the congregation. And he got away with that for a month or two until they were found out. And they came in and they fired him, because that's not how the deal works. It's got to be Pastor Greschel on the big screen. That's just how they're set up. But multiple campuses is another feature of a megachurch. Okay, along those lines, then you tend to have a celebrity pastor, right? You know, Joel Osteen, Craig Greschel. You could probably name some others. Go ahead.
Technically, the Wells has some then. There are some congregations.
We are on the edge in
Like,
two cases that I can think of. St. Mark's Watertown would be close, and in New London.
Oh, and I was thinking of St. Paul's Muskego and Bloomington.
Are they that big now?
Muskego is gigantic.
Okay. So it's
They
just
have church in their church and they have church in their gym, like at the same time.
yeah. So there might be a few Wells churches that sneak into the small end of this.
Well, right.
Yeah.
Right.
But not so. And I suppose some of them are going to belong to a traditional denomination. Most of them tend to be evangelical, right, of some sort. Usually independent. The Southern Baptist Convention has a fair number of them. You'll never see Baptist on the. It's like our friends down the sidewalk here at the church. They're a member of the Southern Baptist Convention, but you won't find Baptist on the sign. There are 1,600 plus of these across the United States.
Why don't they put Baptist on the sign?
At this point in history, a lot of Baptists are embarrassed to be counted Baptist. So Baptists, in the minds of a lot of people, they know, have a reputation for being sometimes
Racist.
Well, there's some of that, although that's a pretty deep history. But there's sometimes that they're a little bit too moralistic, a little too preachy, a little bit judgmental, pharisaical, kind of a better than thou attitude. There's and personally, I have my differences with the Baptists, but not for any of the above so much, right? The Southern Baptist Convention has done more mission work than any denomination in the United States for like close to 100 years. So you can criticize them if you like, but they're getting the gospel to more new people than practically anybody else. But that's part of the offense of the gospel, right? And I would say if there's a mistake in what they've done here, it's like, whether the world likes your name or not, you got to have to own it. Right? There's some Wisconsin Synod churches that want to take Lutheran and Wells off and not even because we have much of a reputation. Nobody knows us, I guess. If it was the 1950s, we were known as the church that was against the Boy Scouts for a little while. But at this point in time, it doesn't really register with people. Even Wisconsin, this is Oklahoma. What's this Wisconsin thing about? Or Lutheran. I've run into people who can't pronounce Lutheran. Lutheran. What's this Lutheran church that you're from? What's that all about? Right? But the kind of the feeling is that the unchurched person won't know that. They'll say, "Well, I'm not a Presbyterian. I'm not a Catholic. I'm not a Lutheran." Well, here's a church that's just Bible, right? Or here's a church that's just Fellowship Church or something, or here's a church that's Community Church. Well, I'm part of the community, right? And that's kind of the marketing thing behind it. I don't know. At the same time, I don't know that I ever had somebody say, I just can't go to your church. You got that Wells thing on the front door. I just can't do that. There's other things people have asked me about. It's like, have you changed your worship format? Do you still wear a robe or not? And it's like, if you want to change your worship format a little bit, we can have that discussion, and there are things you could do. Could I just preach in a suit? Could I be up here in jeans and a t-shirt? I could be. It's probably not most of your cup of tea, but I could be. It's nothing in the Bible that says one or another. But I've never had a person walk out the door and say, I just can't attend your church because of the way you dress. Never had that happen. So until I get some feedback that somehow it's an offense to the gospel, which I see no evidence of whatsoever, I just don't see that. So I'm not married to my robe. It's the third different kind I've had in my ministry. It's not like we've been stuck on one the whole time. But Is it worth changing? I'm a little bit more married to the fact that I'm a part of the Wisconsin Synod Lutheran Church. At this point in history, I think it's as close to the gospel and as close to true biblical teaching as you're going to find, right? And I've had it in Bible class, in Bible information class. So you guys really think that? So you think that that the way you believe is really the right way? Isn't that what faith means? Right? If I didn't think it was right, wouldn't I teach something else? These things go hand in hand. So it's not a matter of pride, but I'm happy to have that be the flag under which I fly, because I personally align with that set of beliefs at this current time. And if, I'm out there trying to share it with everybody, I'm not discounting the fact that there are other flavors of Christianity, but this is the one that fits me. So it's the one I'm working in. All right, anyway, get off that soapbox and always point it there. I need to point it there. It's not behind me. Okay, so what are the perceived advantages here? Well, okay, so I think part of it is that people feel like they have options and choices, right? If I don't want to go to church on Sunday, I can still go to church on Saturday night. Many of these mega churches, because of the way they run things, they don't necessarily come, we do this way of worship because we believe it's biblical. They say, well, some people like worship with this flavor, and some like it this way, and some this way. So you can go to some of these mega churches, and they will have a liturgical service, something like what we're used to, or even more high church than that. Something more like you might see in a Catholic or Episcopal church. Now, the doctrine isn't going to be Catholic or Episcopal, but the flavor of the worship is going to be a little bit more that kind of tradition. And then they'll have and that meets in this chapel on this part of the campus, or this meets at that time. And then over here, you get this group, and there you got the praise band up front. And for some, the praise band might sound like James Taylor. There's a TV show, Blackish, where they get invited by their friends to their church, and literally the praise band is singing the song, "How Sweet It Is to Be Loved by You." Which, of course, is, that's just straight out of James Taylor. And, of course, they're just, of course, they're giving it a twist, right? Or it could be kind of grungy garage band rock. They may have different service for old people, the boomers and the Gen Xers versus the millennials and the Gen Zers based on that kind of thing, right? And then they send, they don't have the kids in church. They have the kids in kids' church. Just, lots of choices and options, and divide the congregation up that way. It's good marketing. And fits our tastes, okay. Accommodates our schedule, that all works together. Allows personal independence. A lot of times, there's no class you take to see, do you line up with this? It's just, on the externals it looks good, and you got a lot of leeway into what you're actually going to personally believe. Which is why when you take, I'm not going to chase this rabbit too far, but there have been numbers of surveys, and they don't come from us from the outside as critics. They come internally within evangelicalism that say that the understanding that a typical so-called evangelical Christian has of the doctrine of their own church and the teachings of the Bible, frankly, has just come down and down and down and down, because in order to appeal to everybody, they insist on nothing. It's just very loosey-goosey. There's a few basics they'll ask of people to sign up for, but a lot of times there just isn't much there. And sometimes into some, what we would consider fairly fundamental historic teachings. So I've got a young lady in our Bible information class right now, and on something like original sin. And this was a new concept to her that she hadn't gotten in her church before. The two natures of Christ was very fuzzy. Appearance of success, of course, bigger is better, right? Bigger is more impressive. And there's kind of this sense that if we're bigger, that says God is blessing this. That argument comes from all kinds of different places. Okay, so the mega churches do it. The Roman Catholic Church has done it, because the Roman Catholic Church may not have the biggest parishes in the world always, but in terms of total membership, they outnumber everybody in Christianity by almost 2 to 1. And so what they'll often say is, obviously God smiles on our church because we outnumber all the rest of you by 2 to 1. And so there's this appearance of success and of God's approval. You know, and if you read Scripture, how is the church? Well, we're going to get into this a little bit, but you know, you look at how was the church doing during the prophet's time? How was the church doing during Jesus' ministry in terms of numbers?
Very small.
Very small. And then sometimes it's just easier, less demanding. You can kind of go in. You can kind of have this anonymity, which some people are looking for. They really don't want to be known, seen. So just as people have moved from the local hardware store to the big box stores, there's been this same kind of a migration in Christianity to these, well, the Church of St. Big Box. From our author, it's already hard to see God at work in the daily grind of our lives. We don't want that difficulty to bleed over into our Sunday as well. So, you know, I don't see God blessing me at work. I've got the problems with coworkers. It's hard. You know, it seems like I barely get out of Sunday church, and already things are becoming, I'm under spiritual attack. And then so when I go into church on Sunday morning, I don't want a little church that's struggling to survive, and where, you know, people know each other maybe too well, and that the interactions aren't always good. You know, it's just better to go to this big thing that just seems to be so solid, and they're not paying that close attention to me, and I kind of do my own thing, and I have these choices. It's just easier. I don't want that difficulty to bleed over into Sunday. Is bigger better? Where are we with all the time? So I think I can run this in two minutes. All right. For Samuel, when they arrived, Samuel saw Eliab and thought, so God has sent Samuel to Bethlehem to anoint the next king of Israel because God has rejected Saul. Okay. God saw Eliab, and so he's gone to the house of Jesse. God didn't tell Samuel which one to anoint. Surely the Lord's anointed stands here before the Lord. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I've rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things man looks at. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. So Samuel said, hey, this guy, he looks tall. He looks regal. He looks like he would command authority. And God says, that's just outward. His size, his appearance, his height. And so the Lord is not necessarily blessing something just because it's got a large population or a large campus. That's not the standard. Zechariah 4, this is the word of the Lord to Zerubbabel, not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, says the Lord Almighty. Where are you, O mighty mountain? Before Zerubbabel, you'll become level ground. Then he'll bring out the capstone to shouts of God bless it, God bless it. So Zerubbabel was given the job of rebuilding the temple. And the temple he was going to build was not going to equal the temple of Solomon that came before him. But God says, you don't let that bother you. You can level the mighty mountain. And when you build this temple for me, you're doing my work. Then the word of the Lord came to me. The hands of Zerubbabel have laid the foundation of this temple. His hands will also complete it. Then you will know that the Lord Almighty has sent me to you. Who despises the day of small things? So maybe it seems to be a step down. But don't despise the small things that God has established. Men will rejoice when they see the plumb line in the hand of Zerubbabel. So it's time to rejoice not in mega churches or mini churches or middle-of-the-road churches, for that matter, to close our eyes to size. Instead, let's rejoice in churches that have a laser-like focus on one thing and one thing only, determining to know nothing among us except Jesus Christ and him crucified. And maybe we can use these questions to start next time. Are there ever advantages in smaller things, smaller churches? And is it necessarily a virtue for a church to be small? So we can take that up as a starting point.